With the BTN group, and I'm here with Katie Virtue, a consultant with Festive Road. So Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jen. Nice to be here.
So I've been asking everyone the same question to start off with. Why was it important, not just for Festive Road to be here at this year's Business Travel Show Europe, but also for you to come? You, like me, traveled over here from the U.S.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure others have talked about, engaging and networking, meeting with people, seeing so many people that you've met, online, and now getting to see them in person. But others might have experienced this. We are a virtual company, and so being at the show gives a lot of our team a chance to also be together, which has been great.
Absolutely, that's great to hear. So we know that there have been a lot of challenges in the past year and a half, but let's not talk about challenges. Let's in fact talk about opportunities, and more specifically, opportunities that have been presented to travel managers over the past year and a half. So what have you seen when you've worked with your customers?
So certainly the whole industry went through a challenging and devastating period, but as you said, we've seen these opportunities emerge for travel managers. And that started with them being a part of stakeholder crisis management teams and getting to interact with so many different people in their organization. And for many, that's thankfully continued. And then now I think bringing more opportunities to be aware of what else is going on within the business, have those continued connections, HR, risk, security, and just continue to develop those relationships. So that's been one aspect. And then also internally has been the presence with leadership. So certainly travel, increasing in importance. And some travel managers have certainly then taken that opportunity to say, how can I elevate my role, the program, the awareness with the leadership in the organization? And then I think that has also led to a review of the program strategy overall. And how are we going to return to travel? And what are the reasons why? Looking at the purpose of travel, and what's the impact then to the people, to company profit, and to the planet?
Absolutely. So I want to just go back and dive a little bit deeper into a few things that you've said. So again, I think we've heard many times now that travel has a seat at the table where maybe they previously have not had that seat, and it really has given travel managers that opportunity to really demonstrate their worth, demonstrate their value, but also show some maybe additional skills that they have that they can bring to the company. What advice do you have, or maybe that you've shared with your customers, for people who maybe are not as comfortable doing that, but because that opportunity exists, how can they sort of take advantage of that?
So I think the communication skill has been a key one, and not only just how do I communicate out to travelers, but how now do I communicate with stakeholders about our program, the importance of it, and then certainly what does that communication look like with leadership? Because it's very different when you're trying to speak to them and speak their language, and they might not understand all the acronyms we normally have or use, but thinking about who your audience is and what you want them to know about the program and the meaning of it, and then delivering that message in the right way.
Absolutely. And so as they communicate with those others within their organizations, and we look at how sort of trying to return to travel and looking at what now are the drivers for the travel program, right? And Festive Road has been so kind in giving a gift to the industry with your purposeful travel framework. Some people use different words, so whether it's purposeful travel, permissible travel, critical travel, what are some of the main changes and drivers that you have seen sort of across the board?
So there are changes in priorities, and we've seen this in surveys that have been done and polls that have been taken to assess what are those new priorities for your organization. And really, you see some that are short-term focused and some that are long-term focused. So short term, it's duty of care, certainly, and well-being. How are we going to help people as restrictions loosen and navigate the complexities of travel? We've both now experienced some of that, coming over here and testing and what you need to do to prepare and travel. So I think in the short term, that's a priority, which has said, okay, now what do we do in terms of our policy, our tools, helping travelers to book and understand that information. Then when you think about the long term, you absolutely get into sustainability. That is certainly high on the agenda, and you have a lot of organizations, I think, at this point trying to figure out where to go with that. I know there's been a lot of great coverage on the topic, and understanding this is what the company has set out with their goals and objectives. What do I now do as a travel manager? And again, do I need to look at policy? Do I need to start sending communications out to travelers about their habits, their behavior to change some of that? What are the metrics and data and measurements, to consider? So that's been a big change. And then I think in the long term, if you think about well-being as well, it's a topic I'm passionate about, and I think there's an opportunity for travel managers to look more at the employee experience. So we've talked about traveler experience, and especially even how that's going to be impacted now when you're so focused on duty of care elements and the complexities to travel. But if you think about it more from an employee experience, almost that shift to, that HR mentality as well, are people achieving their objectives when they go on a trip? For the company, for themselves? Are they gaining personal development? I'd love to see some more of those types of questions asked beyond just how was the flight, how was the hotel, how were those logistics, but how was the actual travel itself, to understand what that employee experience was.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned employee experience, because that leads into another topic that I wanted to ask you about. So you mentioned, Festive is a virtual company. I've been a remote worker for years, even before the pandemic. So now that all of these companies have these distributed workforces, I think potentially the definition of a business trip might actually change, because we're looking at now people working from home. Now when they do need to come to the office, guess what? That might now be a business trip. So how do you see, and this is our last question as we need to wrap up shortly, but how is that potentially going to change the role of the travel manager?
So you said it, companies are looking at their workplace strategy, and they're very fluid right now, and some setting one and then changing it, and of course that is impacting travel and the travel manager role. I think the key word I continue to hear is flexibility. So even though they might set an initial plan for how they're going to operate with a hybrid workforce or remote, that may change. So what is the immediate impact to your program, and then being able to be agile and flexible with your program. As you started to say, new types of travel that you have to account for. Is local travel going to fall under your remit? Will you have a lot more people who are now travelers that weren't before, and how do you handle that? And then certainly there are those who are starting to look a little bit ahead and say, okay, based on all of those changes of where people are going to work, live, what type of trends are we going to see that might impact our air patterns and the types of accommodations we need, the content we need to have? So that then becomes something that they have to track. And then it's interesting to see from that, what are they going to do in terms of their program structure? Do they need to have different suppliers, different suppliers that they would work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you, and that I think connects back to what you started with, is that stakeholder engagement piece, right? So these are the exact kinds of conversations then that you need to be having with your HR folks, with your finance folks, with your procurement folks, because we're entering a whole new world. So, well, Katie, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you too.